The great ship moved through the darkness of space like a silver blade cutting through black water. Its name was the Voice of Empire, and for 200 years it had carried ambassadors to every corner of known space. Every species that saw it understood what it meant. The Valorian Empire had come to make an offer, and no one had ever refused that offer. Ambassador Kethra stood at the viewing window of his private chamber. His skin was pale blue, and his 4 eyes watched the stars pass by with the calm patience of someone who had done this many times before. Behind him, his assistant Mevlon was reading from a data pad. "The humans control only 12 planets," Mevlon said. "Their military is small compared to ours. They have been traveling between stars for only 300 years. By all measures, they should be eager for our protection." Kethra made a soft sound of agreement. This was always how it went. A young species new to space travel would see the size of the Empire and understand their position. They would see the 17 star systems under Imperial control, the thousands of warships, the trillions of citizens, and they would know that resistance was foolish. The Empire always offered good terms. "Join us, pay tribute, follow our laws, and you will be safe. You will have access to our technology, our trade routes, our knowledge. You will be part of something greater than yourselves." It was a good deal. Everyone agreed it was a good deal. That was why no one had ever said no. The Voice of Empire dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Kethra looked at the small yellow star in the distance. Around it orbited the planet called Earth, the birthplace of the human species. Such a small place to produce a species that had spread to 12 worlds. He almost felt sorry for them. They had done well for such a young race. But now their time of independence was over. A human ship came to meet them. It was small and simple, with none of the decorations that the Empire used to show status. Kethra found this interesting. Most species tried to impress visitors with their best ships, their finest warriors, their richest treasures. The humans sent a plain gray vessel with no markings except a small flag painted on its side. The meeting took place in a room aboard the Voice of Empire. Kethra had made sure it was impressive. Tall ceilings covered in gold. Rare stones from a dozen worlds set into the walls. A table made from the wood of a tree that only grew on the Imperial homeworld. Everything was designed to show power and wealth. The humans did not seem to notice. There were 3 of them, 2 men and 1 woman. They wore simple dark clothing with no jewelry or decoration. They sat down at the table and looked at Kethra with calm, patient expressions. They did not seem afraid. They did not seem impressed. They simply waited. Kethra began his speech. He had given it many times before. He spoke of the greatness of the Empire. He spoke of the benefits of membership. He spoke of the protection that the Imperial fleet would provide against pirates and raiders. He spoke of access to technology that would advance human civilization by centuries. He spoke of trade opportunities that would make their merchants wealthy beyond imagination. Then he spoke of the alternative. He did not make threats. He did not need to. He simply mentioned that the Empire had never lost a war. He mentioned that species who refused the offer tended to regret it. He mentioned that the Imperial fleet could field 10,000 warships if necessary. When he finished, he waited for the humans to react. Usually, at this point, the representatives of a new species would ask questions. They would want to know about the terms of tribute. They would want to negotiate for better conditions. They would want time to consult with their leaders. These were all normal responses, expected responses. The human woman looked at her 2 companions. They nodded slightly. Then she turned back to Kethra and spoke a single word. "No." Kethra waited for her to continue. She did not. "I apologize," he said. "Perhaps there has been a translation error. No to what specifically?" "To all of it," the woman said. "We will not join your empire. We will not pay tribute. We will not follow your laws. Thank you for coming all this way, but we are not interested." Mevlon dropped his data pad. The sound was very loud in the silent room. Kethra felt confusion rising in his mind. This was not how the conversation was supposed to go. He tried again. Perhaps you do not understand the situation. The Empire controls 17 star systems. We have more warships than your species has cities. We are offering you a place in the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. We understand, the woman said. We are still not interested. But why? The woman seemed to think about this for a moment. Because we do not want to. That is enough. You could negotiate for better terms. We are prepared to be generous with a species as promising as yours. We do not want better terms. We want to be left alone. Kethra felt something he had never felt before in a diplomatic meeting. He felt uncertain. He did not know what to do next. In all his years of service, in all his dozens of first contact situations, no one had ever simply said no and refused to discuss it further. I must report this to the Imperial Council, he said finally. They will not be pleased. That is your choice, the woman said. She stood up. Her companion stood with her. Thank you for the meal. The food was very good. We will show ourselves out. And they left. Kethra stood in the golden room for a long time after they were gone. He looked at the precious stones in the walls. He looked at the rare wood of the table. He thought about the 10,000 warships of the Imperial fleet. Then he went to send his message to the council. There had been a misunderstanding, he told himself. The humans did not know what they were dealing with. Once the council explained things more clearly, they would change their minds. Every species did in the end. But deep in his mind, in a place he did not want to look at too closely, Kethra felt the first small seed of something unfamiliar. It would take him a long time to recognize it as fear. The Imperial Council met in the Great Hall of the Homeworld. The room was ancient, built thousands of years ago when the Valorian people first united under a single ruler. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The walls were covered with the flags of every species that had joined the Empire over the centuries. There were 47 flags. Soon, the Council believed, there would be 48. High Chancellor Vorthen sat at the head of the long table. He was old, his blue skin faded to a pale gray, but his 4 eyes were still sharp. He had served the Empire for more than a century. He had seen many species brought into the fold. The process was always the same. Show strength, offer peace, accept their surrender. It was simple. It was effective. It had never failed. The humans have refused our terms, Ambassador Kethra reported. His voice was steady, but those who knew him well could hear the confusion beneath it. They did not make a counter-offer. They did not ask for time to consider. They simply said no. The council members looked at each other. Some seemed amused, others seemed puzzled. Perhaps they did not understand, suggested Admiral Velthos, commander of the Imperial fleet. Young species sometimes have difficulty grasping the reality of their situation. They see our ships and think they are impressive. They do not realize that what they see is a tiny fraction of our power. I explained our strength clearly, Kethra said. I believe they understood. Then they are foolish, Velthos said, and fools must be taught. High Chancellor Vorthen raised his hand for silence. What is our standard procedure in such cases? A demonstration, Velthos answered. We show them what defiance costs. We destroy something small, a mining station, an outpost, something with enough people to make an impact but not enough to seem like we are starting a full war. Then we wait. When they see what we can do, they always come back to negotiate. How many times has this procedure been necessary? 3 times in the last 500 years. It has worked every time. Vorthen nodded slowly. Then proceed, but be careful. I do not want this to become a war if it can be avoided. Wars are expensive. Admiral Velthos smiled. It will not become a war. The humans will see our strength and understand. They will come begging for the terms we offered before. Perhaps we will be generous. Perhaps we will not. That will depend on how quickly they learn their lesson. The fleet moved 3 days later, 40 warships. each one larger than any vessel the humans had ever built. They jumped through faster than light travel and arrived at the outer edge of the Sol system. Their target was a mining station orbiting a distant planet. The station processed ice and rock from the rings of the gas giant. 3,000 humans worked there. They extracted water and metals and sent them back to the inner planets where they were needed. The people on the station saw the Imperial ships appear on their sensors. They sent messages to Earth, asking for instructions. They received no response before the first shots were fired. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The mining station had a few small defense weapons, meant to destroy asteroids that came too close. They were useless against warships. The Imperial guns tore through the station like paper. Metal twisted and broke. Air rushed out into the vacuum. Bodies floated in the darkness between the broken pieces of what had once been home to 3,000 souls. When it was over, Admiral Velthos ordered his ships to hold position. Now they would wait. Soon the humans would send a message. They would be angry at first. Then they would be afraid. Then they would ask what the Empire wanted. And the Empire would tell them. The same terms as before, or perhaps worse. That was the price of defiance. On Earth, news of the attack spread within hours. Every screen on every planet showed images of the destroyed station. The names of the dead scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Mothers, fathers, children, workers who had been doing nothing more dangerous than mining ice when death came for them from the stars. The people of Earth watched in silence. In the great cities, crowds gathered in public squares. They did not shout. They did not cry. They stood together and watched the screens and said nothing. The silence spread across the planet like a wave. It spread to the colonies on Mars and Venus. It spread to the settlements in the outer system. It spread to every human world. In the halls of government, leaders met behind closed doors. There were no debates about surrender. There were no discussions about negotiating for better terms. There was only one question: how long would it take? The human ambassador sent a message to the Imperial fleet. It was short. It contained no requests for peace. It contained no begging for mercy. It contained only 7 words. You should not have done that. Admiral Velthos read the message and laughed. He showed it to his officers. They laughed too. What else could the humans say? They had no power to back up their words. Their threat was empty. Soon enough they would understand this. But one young officer, a female named Kethla who had just begun her service, did not laugh. She looked at the message and felt something cold move through her chest. She had studied human history as part of her training. She knew about their wars. She knew about their capacity for violence. And she knew one thing that her admiral did not seem to understand. Humans did not make empty threats. When they said something, they meant it. When they promised revenge, they delivered it. It might take time, it might take years, but they never forgot and they never stopped. Kethla said nothing to her superiors. She was too young, too low in rank. No one would listen to her, but she began to keep a private record of her thoughts. She wanted someone to know, when the time came, that at least one person in the Imperial fleet had seen the truth. The humans were not afraid. They were angry. And that, Kethla knew, was a very different thing. 3 weeks passed after the attack on the mining station. The Imperial fleet waited at the edge of the Sol system. Their sensors watched for any sign of human ships approaching. Their communication officers listened for any message from Earth. They expected anger. They expected fear. They expected desperate attempts at negotiation. They received nothing. The silence was complete. No human ships came near the fleet. No messages arrived. The dead station floated in the darkness, and the humans said nothing about it, did nothing about it. They simply continued with their lives as if the 40 Imperial warships did not exist. Admiral Velthos paced the bridge of his flagship. He had done this many times before. He knew how the process worked. First came the demonstration of power. Then came the fear. Then came the negotiations. But the humans were not following the pattern. They were not doing anything at all. "Perhaps they are paralyzed with fear," suggested his second-in-command. "Perhaps they are so terrified that they cannot even respond." "Perhaps," Velthos said, but he did not believe it. The message they had sent did not sound like the words of a terrified people. It sounded like a promise. On the Imperial homeworld, intelligence officers began to notice strange patterns. Human merchants who had been living and working in Imperial space were quietly closing their shops. Human workers were resigning from their jobs at joint ventures and research stations. Human diplomats were packing their belongings and booking passage home. None of them said why. When asked, they smiled politely and said they had personal business to attend to, family matters, health concerns, nothing to worry about. They thanked their imperial hosts for their kindness and left without looking back. Within 2 weeks, there were almost no humans left in imperial space. A young intelligence analyst named Thevra compiled a report on these movements. She brought it to her superiors with a worried look on her face. "It is as if they are preparing for something," she said. "They are cutting all connections between themselves and us, every trade agreement, every partnership, every friendship. They are ending everything quietly and carefully without making any noise." Her supervisor looked at the report and frowned. "What does it mean?" "I do not know," Thevra admitted. "But a species that intended to surrender would not do this. They would be reaching out to us. They would be trying to build connections, not destroy them. This looks like preparation." "Preparation for what?" Thevra was silent for a moment. "For war," she said finally, "but not any kind of war I have seen before." Her supervisor dismissed her concerns. The humans had 12 planets. The Empire had 17 star systems. The math was simple. Whatever the humans were planning, it could not succeed. But Thevra could not stop thinking about it. She began to research human history more deeply. She read about their ancient wars. She read about their capacity for patience. She read about a strategy they called total war, where an entire civilization devoted itself to destroying an enemy. She read about how they had fought among themselves for centuries, developing new weapons and new tactics with each conflict. And she read about something called vengeance. The humans had a saying, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." It took Thevra a long time to understand what this meant. When she finally did, she felt ice in her stomach. The humans were not panicking, they were not negotiating, they were waiting, planning, preparing, and when they were ready they would strike. Thevra tried to warn her superiors again. They told her she was being dramatic. The humans were a young species. They did not have the resources to challenge the Empire. Their silence was the silence of defeat, not the silence of preparation. Thevra did not argue. She had learned that arguing with people who had already made up their minds was a waste of time. Instead, she began to make her own preparations. She moved her family to a quiet world far from the borders of human space. She converted her savings into easily transportable goods. She studied the layout of emergency shelters in her city. Her friends thought she was being paranoid. She hoped they were right. Across the Empire, life continued as normal. Ships traveled between worlds. Merchants sold their goods. Children went to school and learned about the greatness of their civilization. The attack on the human mining station was mentioned occasionally in the news, but it was not considered important. A small action against a minor species. Nothing that affected the daily lives of imperial citizens. Admiral Velthos grew tired of waiting. He sent messages to Earth demanding a response. He threatened further attacks if the humans did not begin negotiations immediately. His messages disappeared into the void without any reply. On the 40th day after the attack, Velthos received new orders from the Imperial Council. His fleet was needed elsewhere. A border dispute in a distant system required attention. He was to leave a small garrison at the edge of human space and return home with the bulk of his forces. Velthos was frustrated. He had wanted to finish this mission. He had wanted to see the humans kneel before imperial power, but orders were orders. He left 10 ships to watch the humans and took the rest of his fleet away. The silence continued. Thevra watched the reports from human space every day. Nothing changed. No ships approached the garrison. No messages were sent. The humans simply existed in their 12 worlds, living their lives as if the Empire were not there at all. But Thevra noticed something that others missed. The humans were building ships, not many, not fast, but steadily, quietly in shipyards hidden in the outer reaches of their territory. New vessels were being constructed. They were different from human ships she had seen before. Smaller, faster, designed for a purpose she could not determine. She added this to her report. No one read it. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, a human admiral looked at a map of imperial space. He studied the positions of every military base, every shipyard, every supply depot. His staff had been gathering this information for years, through trade missions and diplomatic visits and simple observation. Now it would be put to use. "Are we ready?" he asked. "Almost," his second-in-command replied. "Another month, maybe 2. The admiral nodded. There was no hurry. The humans had waited 300 years to reach the stars. They could wait a little longer to teach the Empire what the word no really meant. The world of Keth Prime was a peaceful place. It sat near the edge of imperial space, far from the homeworld but close to several important trade routes. A military base there protected merchant ships from pirates. 50,000 soldiers lived in the base. 2 million civilians lived in the cities below. They had never known war. They believed they never would. On a quiet morning, the sky filled with light. Sensors detected the ships first. They came out of faster-than-light travel closer to the planet than should have been possible. The technology to do this was beyond anything the Empire possessed. By the time alarms began to sound, the human vessels were already firing. The battle lasted 12 minutes. Human ships moved with impossible speed, dodging defensive fire that seemed slow and clumsy by comparison. They targeted the military installations with perfect accuracy. Orbital platforms vanished in balls of flame. Ground bases erupted in explosions that could be seen from space. Communication arrays were destroyed before a single distress call could be sent. And then, as quickly as they had appeared, the human ships were gone. When the survivors emerged from shelters and looked at the sky, they saw only smoke and falling debris. The entire military presence on Keth Prime had been destroyed in less time than it took to eat a meal. But the cities were untouched. Not a single civilian building had been hit. Not a single civilian had died. The people of Keth Prime stood in the streets and stared at the ruins of what had protected them. They did not understand what had happened. They did not know who had attacked or why. They only knew that the empire that had promised to keep them safe had failed. News of the attack reached the Imperial Council 2 days later, when a merchant ship arrived and reported what it had found. High Chancellor Vorthan listened to the report with growing disbelief. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We had 50,000 soldiers there, ships in orbit, the best weapons the Empire can build. How did the humans destroy everything in 12 minutes? No one had an answer. 3 days after Keth Prime, another world went silent. Then another. Then 5 more in a single week. The pattern was always the same. Human ships appeared without warning, destroyed every military target with surgical precision, left civilians unharmed, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They used technology that should not exist, moved in ways that defied understanding, and never lost a single ship. Admiral Velthos was sent to stop them. He gathered the largest fleet in Imperial history. 2,000 warships moved to intercept the human attacks. They spread out across the border, watching every world, waiting for the next strike. The humans attacked 3 worlds that were not being watched. Velthos moved his fleet to cover the gap. The humans hit 2 more worlds behind him. He split his forces to protect more territory. The humans destroyed them in small groups, picking off isolated squadrons with overwhelming local force before disappearing into the darkness. It was like fighting smoke. Every time Velthos reached for the enemy, his hand closed on nothing. Every time he built a defense, the humans found a way around it. They did not fight like any enemy the Empire had faced before. They did not seek glory or territory or resources. They sought only one thing: destruction. On the homeworld, fear began to spread. Citizens who had never worried about safety began to wonder if they were next. Merchants who had laughed at the young human species now spoke of them in whispers. Politicians who had demanded harsh action against the defiant aliens now argued for peace at any price. High Chancellor Vorthen sent message after message to the human government. He offered new terms, better terms. He promised to return the worlds that had been attacked. He promised reparations for the mining station. He promised anything the humans wanted if they would only stop. The humans sent the same reply every time: "We told you no." Vorthen did not understand. He was offering them everything: power, wealth, independence. Why would they not negotiate? Why would they not even talk? The answer came from an unexpected source. A scholar named Methvil, who had spent his life studying alien species, requested an audience with the council. He was old and had no political power, but in desperate times, people listened to those they would normally ignore. "You do not understand humans," Methvil told the council. "You think they want something: land, resources, respect. But that is not what drives them. They are not fighting for gain. They are fighting because you hurt them. You killed 3,000 of their people and expected them to be afraid. Instead, you made them angry." "But we are offering them everything," Vorthen said. "Surely that is enough." "It is not about what you offer," Methvil replied. "It is about what you did. Humans have a concept that is difficult to translate. They call it the point of no return. Once you cross that point, nothing you say or do can fix what is broken. You crossed that point when you destroyed the mining station. The humans will not negotiate now. They cannot. Their psychology does not allow it." "Then what will they do?" Methvil was quiet for a long moment. "They will continue until they feel safe. And the only way they will feel safe is if you can no longer threaten them. They will destroy your military, your shipyards, your ability to make war, and they will keep destroying until there is nothing left." "That is impossible," Velthos said. "We are the Empire. We have ruled this region of space for 3,000 years. "Yes," Methvil said softly. "You have. Past tense, Admiral, past tense." That night, 3 more worlds reported attacks. The Imperial fleet lost another 200 ships, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, human admirals looked at their maps and planned the next phase of the war. They were not tired, they were not discouraged, they were only beginning. Emperor Kael'thas III had ruled for 40 years. His father had ruled before him and his grandfather before that. The line of emperors stretched back 3,000 years, unbroken, unthreatened, secure in their power. No enemy had ever reached the homeworld. No force had ever challenged the throne. Now the emperor sat alone in his private chamber, reading reports that grew worse with each passing day. 30 military installations destroyed. 800 warships lost. The shipyards that built the Imperial fleet reduced to floating debris. And still the humans came, silent and relentless, striking without warning and vanishing without a trace. His generals told him the situation was desperate. His advisors told him surrender was the only option, but the humans would not accept surrender. They would not answer calls for peace. They would not negotiate. There was only one thing left to try. On a cold morning, the emperor boarded a small ship with no weapons and no escort. He flew alone to the border of human space and broadcast a single message on every frequency. "I am Kael'thas, emperor of the Valorian people. I come without weapons or guards. I ask only for the chance to speak. Please, let us talk." For 3 days, nothing happened. The Emperor waited in his ship, watching the stars, wondering if the humans would simply ignore him as they had ignored everyone else. He did not eat. He barely slept. He had never felt so helpless in his life. On the fourth day, a human ship appeared. It was small and gray, the same type of vessel that had come to the first diplomatic meeting so many months ago. It approached slowly and docked with the Imperial ship. A door opened, and a single figure stepped through. She was an elderly woman with gray hair and deep lines on her face. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Her eyes were calm and steady as she looked at the most powerful being in the known galaxy. "Emperor Kael'thas," she said, "my name is Admiral Sarah Chen. I speak for humanity." The Emperor rose from his chair and bowed his head. "Thank you for coming. I did not know if you would." "I almost did not," Chen admitted. "Many of my people wanted me to ignore you. They said you deserved the same silence you gave us. But I am old and I have learned that endings matter. So I came." They sat across from each other in the small room. There were no golden decorations, no precious stones, no rare woods, just two chairs and a table between them. "I do not understand," the Emperor said. "We offered you everything: peace, prosperity, protection. Why did you refuse? Why did you choose war?" Chen looked at him for a long moment. "You think we chose this? We did not. You chose it for us when you killed 3,000 of our people. It was a demonstration, a warning. We have done it before with other species. They always understood." "Other species are not human." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Let me explain something to you, Emperor. When you threatened us, we were not afraid. When you showed us your power, we were not impressed. We have been threatening and killing each other for 10,000 years. We are very good at violence. We have had much practice." "Then why did you say no? If you knew you could fight, why not negotiate from a position of strength?" "Because negotiation requires trust, and we do not trust people who threaten us. We cannot. Our history has taught us that those who give in to threats receive more threats. Those who show weakness are destroyed. The only way to be safe is to make the threat go away, permanently." The Emperor felt the weight of her words. "So you would have destroyed us entirely?" "If necessary, yes." Chen's voice was flat and honest. "We would have burned every military base, every shipyard, every weapon factory in your empire. We would have done it without hatred, without anger, without joy. We would have done it because it was necessary to keep our people safe." "And now, what do you want now?" Chen reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data device. She placed it on the table between them. "A border," she said. "Here are the coordinates. Everything on your side stays yours. Everything on our side stays ours. Your ships do not cross. Our ships do not cross. There is no tribute, no trade, no communication. We simply exist separately forever. And if we agree to this, then we stop. We go home. We rebuild what you destroyed, and we leave you to rebuild what we destroyed, and we never speak again. And if we refuse?" Chen did not answer. She did not need to. The Emperor had seen the reports. He knew what human ships could do. He knew that his military was broken, his defenses shattered, his people terrified. "I accept," he said. Chen nodded. She stood up and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned back. "May I ask you something, Emperor?" "Yes." "At the beginning, when our ambassador told you no, when she refused your offer and asked to be left alone, why did you not simply leave?" The Emperor thought about this for a long time. "Because no one had ever said no before. I thought she did not understand. I thought she needed to be shown the consequences." "And now?" The Emperor looked at the small gray woman who had brought his empire to its knees. He thought about the golden halls of his palace, the flags of conquered species on his walls, the 3,000 years of history that had taught his people they could not be defeated. "Now I understand," he said quietly. "She said no, I should have listened." Chen nodded once. "Yes, you should have." She walked through the door and was gone. The Emperor sat alone in his ship for a long time. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere beyond them, the humans were already turning their ships toward home. They had made their point. They had drawn their line. And they had taught the greatest empire in known space a lesson it would never forget. Some species did not negotiate. Some species did not surrender. Some species, when threatened, simply became the threat. The humans were going home, but the memory of what they had done would remain in imperial space forever, and no Valorian would ever forget the day they learned what the word no really meant.